Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of
A Fan's Perspective.
All right, guys, it has been about a week. Legend of Korra out on Netflix for everyone to enjoy. Let me do a quick check real quick. I'm almost positive it is number 1 on Netflix, but it is number 2 currently. It's right behind Project Power by Jamie Foxx. Give it some time, it'll be number 1.
Yeah, give it next week.
Give it next week, it'll be number 1. Project Power is a movie that ain't gonna last. Korra is 52 episodes. That will.
I haven't heard the greatest things about Project Power.
I heard some okay things. And then right behind Korra is Umbrella Academy, just like I expected it to be. So we will talk about that show at some point, folks, but we'll get to that at a later point. Today's episode is on the first season of The Legend of Korra, Book 1, Air. Now, before we get into this, though, we have some news that broke last week after we published the podcast.
The Avatar news?
Yeah, some Avatar news that I want to get your opinion on, Shelby, because everyone kind of is of the same consensus. Let me make sure I have everything correct, because I don't want to read their full statement, but
to my understanding, the two main creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender are stepping away from the live action production. If you didn't know, Netflix was making it still is making a live action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yep, and Bryan Konietzko and Michael Dante DiMartino are both out. They both got out. They were originally set to be the showrunners. They were set to be the creators and have all of the creative control. And
not all of it.
Well, not all of it, but they were in charge of everything. They were in charge.
Yeah. So when the deal was struck, they were told that they would be able to make their vision, and basically Netflix kind of reneged on that. Like they. From our understanding of their two posts, they don't say that directly. They pretty much just say that they were told that, they would be able to make their vision of the show, and that isn't going to come to pass. So they stepped away. Now,
the thing is, this project got announced, if I'm not mistaken, back in 2018.
Yeah.
It got announced on I'm looking on Michael Dante DiMartino's Instagram page, and it got announced on September 18th of 2018. So basically, we went a full year and change with no news on a script, no news on casting, no news on any developments beyond Avatar, beyond the Avatar and Korra coming to Netflix. That was the biggest news we had gotten in about a year since then. Now, I'd been following both of them on Instagram so I could get updates, and they didn't even really have any updates for us. So I'm thinking that there had to have just been some serious discussions behind the scenes that just proved that it wasn't going to work.
Well, from my understanding, what I recall, they were going to begin casting in February of this year, and then life happened.
Yeah, the pandemic.
But I'm 100% sure that between 2018 and 2020, with Netflix being Netflix and them having input into the project, they were probably going to change something, or it probably just came down to the idea that Netflix couldn't do everything that they wanted to do. They're like, yeah, instead of that, just turn it into this. Trying to think of an example, but they probably had to reduce the scale of the show, I would imagine.
That would make sense, and I think that you not only do you have to reduce the scale, but let's be real, a live action Avatar done correctly, the amount of special effects needed is it's staggering. It's staggering.
Yeah. It would be so expensive that I never got the concept of this show from get-go. I don't get how they plan to make it and make it be good, because I didn't think it was possible.
Even with current shows for example, Umbrella Academy, which I know you haven't seen, or even The Boys, the amount of special effects they use isn't as in depth as what would have been needed for Like with the boys, for example, you've got Homelander, who's basically Superman. You've got the Deep when he's going through the water. You've got
Which you barely,
Starlight
but
when
see the
she's using her
difference.
powers. But all of those things are not nearly as severe as just Aang going into the Avatar state.
Yeah, see the thing is, with TV shows and like television adaptations of comic books, they minimize the special effects. They try to, the boys as an example, like it is kept very simple. It's heat vision, it's a light blast. That's about it.
It's
Maybe
super
some,
strength, which is
yeah,
really
super
easy
strength.
to, which is really
Yeah,
easy to
yeah,
show.
it's simple stuff.
Even
So
flight is
it's
not
easy.
is easy, but it's
Yeah,
not seen
because
as much.
it's partly practical as well. So yeah, I don't really get how this is gonna happen and be successful. Obviously, it's carrying the Avatar name, and it's going to have people that watch it, but I don't think it's going to do well, especially now.
I mean, I honestly don't know if they're going to continue with it because we haven't heard any news beyond like Netflix hasn't really commented from what I have seen. I don't think I've seen anything showing that they've really responded to the two to their. By the way, the two creators are affectionately known by the fandom as Bryke, so that's just easier to say than both their names. But I don't know how Netflix has responded to Bryke leaving, but I
That's so
don't
lame.
I don't what
That's not.
their
Yeah,
nickname.
that's bright. That's lame.
I mean, Bryan and
I'm
Mike.
I'm gonna
It's
be the one to say it. No, this one doesn't work. I'm gonna be honest. It's not like it's not D&D or it's not, like, no, that one
it's not the
doesn't work.
Russo brothers. I get it, but
Yeah,
I
break.
but I just don't see. I don't really see how it's how they can really justify doing this show without them. And personally, I saw a post recently from a writer I follow who writes for Forbes, who basically said like this is Netflix's chance to be like, okay, here's what we do. We need to kind of keep this Avatar momentum going, and clearly we're not going to be able to get this. We're not going to be able to get this live action thing off the ground. Guys, if you come back, would you be willing to do another Avatar series, like
Yeah,
another
Kyoshi.
animated series?
Yeah, just convert it to
Like
Kyoshi.
either make Kyoshi animate the Kyoshi books, or do a earthbending sequel to
Nope.
Korra. I know you don't want that, but some people
Nope.
do. Some people legitimately
Yeah,
think
I bet they do. And you know what we gonna get? We gonna get a sequel to Korra that's on a Netflix schedule. Nope.
what do you mean? What
That means
why is
that
that a
means that
problem?
that means you have to create a whole new story that people are going to like on a Netflix schedule. It has to be a Netflix timeline.
Which has been done. I mean, the Dragon Prince, for example, people love that series.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know a single person that's watched the Dragon Prince. I haven't seen it yet.
I'm
That
sure
complain
before
about
that
it.
was pitched, there was an idea of the story.
True. Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess that was more of
Yeah, yeah.
a thing of like you had to at least plan it out. And
See,
if
I
they
remember Voltron. See, you don't
Oh
remember
yeah, I
Voltron.
didn't watch Voltron. I didn't watch
Yeah,
Voltron.
yeah, yeah.
Is
So,
that a bad thing?
yeah.
Oh.
You don't know the story of
No,
Voltron
I
and
don't.
Netflix?
No, I don't actually.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually very entertaining story of about how a show started off really good and ended up being really bad.
Oh. Okay. All right, fair enough.
Yep,
We do want to avoid that, so
yep.
we'll leave that alone for right now.
Now, Kiyoshi, again, 2 books. Um, that's more than 2 seasons in all honesty, because they're
Yeah.
full books,
Yeah.
not comic books. Or you could possibly do something based on the Avatar comic books.
Yeah, maybe
You
give
could.
us another Korra, like a actual ending to Korra, maybe.
Yeah. See, if they really want to make cash, this would be my plan. If you let's say it costs like, I don't know, half the money to make live, animated. I don't know the exact numbers, but they could do an animated version of the comic books for Avatar, of which there are I'm looking at the volumes right now. There are at this time six full volumes of stories. That
Now, the only thing I guess I have a little bit tricky on is that if you do that, you have a situation where I know for a fact Aang's voice actor was a kid when he was doing the role. Um,
oh yeah,
so
the voice
how do you
actors. Yeah,
hand like I know this from
I have
just
no idea.
playing Kingdom Hearts. When the voice actors age, you notice the difference.
How old was he? Because he does Aang's voice in Korra. So
He do his full voice in like his adult voice?
yeah, when you watch the no the young voice, he does the young voice in Korra.
When is Aang young in Korra?
No. You're misinterpreting. The voice actor
Uh huh.
does the voice of Aang, not the character, but he does the voice in Korra. Season 2, episode 1.
Oh, I mean, if that's the case,
No,
then
no, not even that. Season 1, episode 12. Turloc's voice is young in Korra.
yeah. I noticed that they shared the same voice. That was Aang's voice,
Yeah, so
and
I don't know if that's something he could
but that
switch
was
to.
8 years ago. This kid's our age now. If he like, even if he
I'm just saying I
was,
don't know how old he was when he recorded Korra. So
I'm sure he was probably still pretty young, and like I mean they could also find a woman to maybe do it because that has a similar voice because that
hey,
happens a
I'm
lot.
all
But
I'm saying is they have material. That's
they
my whole
do
point
they
for
do.
you. You got a sidetrack.
No,
No,
I'm sorry, but it's
no,
just
no.
they definitely have the material, and I think people would like to see at least the promise animated because it answers the Zuko's mom
Whatever
question.
happened to Zuko's mom? Well, actually, it's a very interesting. It's actually a very interesting
The
story.
open trolling is amazing.
Yeah,
The open
yeah,
trolling is amazing.
yeah. But I'm saying they have a source material. I don't want anything to be not to downplay the Legend of Korra, and we're going to dive into Legend of Korra. I don't want it to be rushed. I want there to be established material for them to draw from and to make better versus not having as much of a plan to make something and
Yeah,
making you know
yeah, and we're gonna get into why that strategy works versus the let's just put this all together plan. So let's get into Korra, because that ties it all in.
yeah.
So
Speaking of Korra, actually to round up that Korra currently has one volume of her book that
okay,
explains what happens after the end of the Legend of Korra, and then there should be a second volume. This is the complete comic series. There should be a second volume coming out some point this year.
okay.
Um, so there's material there too, just not as much as the original series. But my vote, again, wrapping that up, would be Kyoshi. Now, book one, Air. Let's
Well,
talk about it.
before my last comment to follow up with you, for those that don't know, there are like Shelby said, there are two full books on Kyoshi called The Rise of Kyoshi, that are
And
available,
Shadow of Kyoshi.
and they're based in the Avatar world. The only thing I guess that you'd have to deal with is the jarring flip of going back in time before even the Fire Nation was technologically advanced. But
Beautiful.
that's something we can discuss
Beautiful.
at
It would
another
be
time.
beautiful. It would be amazing.
Have you read these books yet?
Most of one.
Okay. Okay. All right. Fair.
Oh,
Well,
CJ. I'm not saying this because I just think I'm not like the average friend that was just like, oh no, Kyoshi was about her business because she killed old dude the Conqueror. No, like the story, I think the beginning story of Kyoshi is so interesting. And it's so, I mean, obviously Avatar is known for his characters. Just the fact that her mom was an airbender that defected from the airbenders and became like a criminal, I find that super interesting.
yeah. No, that is bonkers, and I really do want to see. I want to see where that goes. I might actually have to dive into those books myself just so I can get my Avatar fix. But yeah, who knows?
Needy.
I don't think this is over. And I promise we'll get to Korra in a second, guys. But I don't think this is over. I just don't think it's a smart business strategy for Netflix to continue with this live action concept. And you've got to think that at least because they're a tech company and they're run by younger people, maybe just maybe they're smarter than some of these old studios that have fumbled what is clearly one of the best money making properties you could get. Anytime you drop both old seasons, like a 12-year-old show and an 8-year-old show, and both of them trend #1 for weeks.
That's a sign.
That's a sign that the money is there. But let's get into Korra, guys. So I gotta say, after watching book 1 again for the first time since 2012, I forgot how good book 1 actually is. I forgot. And this is probably how I'm going to feel about the entire time outside of book 3. That I forgot how how much I enjoy watching Korra. And that might just be partially because of a little bit of Avatar nostalgia, a little bit of enjoying the world of Avatar. But I definitely don't think the show, at least based off of book 1, should get some of the heat that it's been getting.
Okay, let me interject.
Okay.
So book 1 is not where the majority of, and let me start off by saying this. Book 1 is not where the majority of the fandom's problems come from. It is primarily, from my understanding, books 2 and book 4.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I only know one person in the entire fandom that has issues with book 3.
Yeah. Now, let me start off by saying this as well. For those who aren't familiar, there is kind of a war among the fandom.
Ooh, it's a bad one too.
Between the reputation of the Legend of Korra versus Avatar: The Last Airbender, the original series. Now, I want to start off by saying, me and CJ have no problem with Korra, or the fact that, like, the character of Korra, or the fact that she's a woman. None of that ties into our opinions of the show. We are looking at the show as a whole, as a series, and basically comparing it to the original series. Now, should they really be compared?
No. Personally, I don't actually think that should happen anymore.
But it's gonna happen because one's it's a sequel series, so it's always gonna be compared to the original. Like, same thing's gonna happen with Game of Thrones. Whenever Fire and Blood, I believe that's what that show is gonna be called. I don't know. Whenever that does release, it's gonna be compared to the original because they take place in the same universe. But the comparisons of Aang versus Korra, I think they're a little too extreme. They're kind of dumb, in my opinion. And I just wanted to give a disclaimer, like, that's not really what we're talking about. We're not talking about how this specific character ruins the show. We're talking about the show as a whole. And I think our biggest gripes with the show is that it just didn't have the same amount of time to be developed as the original one.
Especially with book 1. So I think they had time to develop
book 1.
No.
Sure.
Well, no. Okay. So let me
Go ahead.
It's complicated to explain because I think they had time to develop book 1 and I think they didn't have time to develop book 1, if that makes sense.
Well, it's only 12 episodes. So there's a
that's
story
what I mean.
there.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, they had an idea of a story, but it had to be condensed into those 12 episodes.
Yeah, since they were only given 12 episodes, certain story beats that definitely needed more time, especially the ending, needed, like, it needed some depth, it needed some growth, it needed a little bit more time to expand. And if you're only given 12 episodes and you've got a 20 episode concept in your head, that's going to be a little bit trickier to do. And then as far as the rest of the show goes, it's our old executive theory. Nickelodeon screwed them for the last book of Korra. Like, they completely screwed them for book 4, and they screwed them for half of book 3. But
well, we'll talk more about that once we get to them. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I just want to bring up the fact that, like, it is. I did some of the research and I was right. They defunded Korra for for like the last few episodes of book 4. They had to make a clips episode, and not a clips episode in the same fashion of the Ember Island Players, where it was all new animation and it was kind of like jokes and a funny recap. They had to reuse old footage. Like, they had to, because there was no way for them to afford it, or they'd have to cut their staff. Like, that's what...
Did they explain why they defunded them?
No, I've got to do some more research, but I believe, like, at that point, that's when Nickelodeon sent them from TV to their website.
I remember that.
And
well, let's circle back on that when we get there.
Yeah, but so the thing about Korra book 1 that we brought up is, like we said, it was 12 episodes originally. It was never supposed to be a series for some stupid reason. It was always supposed to be a mini series up until the first episode aired. Literally, I remember when it aired. I followed Bryan Konietzko on Tumblr at the time, and he just and he was stunned by how many people had tuned in to watch, and apparently Nickelodeon was stunned too, and they immediately gave them 3 more seasons because so many people had tuned in to watch episode 1 of Korra. They had more people watching Korra than were watching American Idol.
So, talking more about that, because the Avatar story is obviously meant to tell a bunch of different stories, and that's some of the groundwork that they laid in the original series. So, how did you like book 1?
Book 1 overall, in my opinion, is a very strong season.
I agree.
Well, I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know why, and I really need to rewatch book 2 because I remember thinking that book 2 was better than book 1, and now I might have to rechange that. I might have to change that that ranking, because book 1 has very solid story beats that they do a very good job of explaining and kind of resolving, but the biggest point where it falters is just how they resolve the biggest issue of the season. Like the big thing that they do with taking everyone's bending away is you obviously can't leave the season with everyone's bending gone. You can't leave Lin Beifong powerless. You can't. You just can't. Mm-hmm. The fandom would have had an uprising, and they do it in a very quick way. It's a very easy way out of, hey, she unlocks airbending, which I know you have a slightly bigger issue with. I don't, because it's the same concept as when Aang unlocked firebending in book 1. In my opinion, we might differ on this, but when she unlocks airbending, she does some basic airbending stuff to get Amon up out the paint, and then after that, Aang shows up. Aang restores the bending. All's well that ends well. The mini-series is done. That's what was supposed to happen, and I understand why they went that route.
I get that too. I understand that. So, talking more about the season rather than just the end.
Sorry, I had to get that out. Like, it was
no. I understand. We're gonna cover that, and we don't have to talk a lot about it. In season 1, obviously, we mentioned this last week. The animation is gorgeous.
Jesus Christ, it's incredible.
Yeah, the choreography, the detail of movement is amazing.
And this is one of the first. This is, I think, because they started doing this in the original Avatar, but this is when they really started getting into the 3D animation bag, where it doesn't look terrible. Like every machine.
They took it to the next level.
Yeah, every machine just looks amazing, from the cars to the airships. In my opinion, I think they look great.
I could tell they're still, 3D was still 3D at that point, but it didn't look bad. It didn't distract me, and I'm like, oh my god, this is terrible. I just like, oh, it's just a 3D robot. But I think one of the goals and one of the things they had time to focus on in Korra, when they were like, hey, we're gonna do a mini series, we're gonna do Korra, was character and relationships. Again, I
Yeah,
think.
except for the fact that the love triangles. That's actually the part I don't like. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
like the
I'm
love
gonna get to
triangle.
that. I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get to
Okay.
that. I think that with Korra, they wanted to put more emphasis on the things that were like just mediocre in Avatar. And
Okay.
so while Avatar did have great relationship moments or just relationships, they were like, hey, we want to take this to the next level. We want to make it so the relationships are a bit more realistic. Because
And by
what they
relationships, do you mean actual ships, or do you mean like just character relationships in general?
between character
Okay.
relationships. Like for example, like
Len and Tenzin.
Tenzin and Lin, they were a thing in the past type deal, or Asami and Mako, and then how Mako has like feelings for Korra type deal, and then where's Bolin, who is my favorite character in
Oh
the
yeah,
show. But
Bolin is the best character of Korra. There's no.
and you know why
Actually, no. Tenzin's the best character, but Bolin's number two
you know why people love Bolin so much?
because they relate to him, and he's like,
In my opinion, he is the closest character to like an Avatar: The Last Airbender character.
yeah. Oh, I completely agree. Bolin's basically earthbending Sokka, and
Yeah, basically. And to me, and I say that because I do notice rewatching. I noticed this before. That is a big emphasis. Like they're like, okay, we're gonna ramp things up. We're gonna make characters more realistic, more 3 dimensional, or more dimensional. And I think this is one of the things that works against Korra, because, and I'm going to do the comparison thing here. Don't kill me for the people that are listening. Um, I think in the case of Aang and Korra, their development is much different, and so Korra comes off as
a hothead.
not even a hothead. She comes off as annoying for the beginning of the series.
Yeah, I
For
can agree with
book,
that.
and as because I've seen a little bit of book two, and rewatching, Korra was allowed to grow up as a regular teenager. And this is another reason why I think the comparison between the Aang and Korra is different, is because their journeys go are different time periods. So
Yeah,
while Korra does go through more than what we see Aang go through in terms of events, they take place between years, versus Aang having to do all of what he had to do within a year. So Aang is forced to mature very quickly, to where Korra is kind of, I don't want to say on a slower journey, but she's learning slower in terms of growth, in terms of as a person growing. If
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah. And it's almost kind of like how you can compare how Korra is as a bender to how Aang is as a bender, because like you can easily make the argument that when it comes to everything but airbending, Korra's a better bender than Aang at earthbending,
Yeah,
than
yeah,
at
for sure.
Aang at firebending, than
Hmm.
Aang at waterbending. It's
Hmm.
just but that's because unlike Aang, by the time we meet Korra, she has been trained
Yeah,
constantly.
she's much older.
She's
She's much older, and it's a different. She's sheltered,
Yeah, she's
so she
she's
has a different
she's
personality.
essentially and this is a sports reference that some people might get. Like she's essentially the football prospect that has been like, oh, this kid can throw a football 50 yards at age 6. Get him into camp. He's going everywhere. He's going to like the pro camps. He's got the private teachers. He's not really allowed to do any other sports other than football. He is like this is it. That's what Korra was. And not to mention we meet them when she's a senior in high school. Like she's
Yeah,
17.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Aang is an 11-year-old kid. So
yeah.
he's
So they're
you
different.
cannot compare how someone is
Aang,
at 11 to how someone is when they're 17.
Well, yeah, true. Aang, like I said, Aang is forced to mature throughout his journey. And Korra, what they put emphasis on, because Aang made mistakes too, and he learned from his mistakes. But the Legend of Korra really puts an emphasis on Korra is humanized to the point where she makes a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes have consequences.
Yeah,
And
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 that's
that's
actually something that they did that I don't think happened as much in Avatar. A lot of Aang's mistakes
well,
didn't.
Aang always had he always rode with his crew, and his crew always made up for his mistakes.
Yeah,
Whether it was Katara, whether in the latter half it was Zuko, or they kind of kept Aang. They were like, "No, this is real," Aang. And then there was a war going on. It wasn't peaceful times. It wasn't like you were just dealing with a minority group. The Fire Nation was a huge force that had
yeah,
already conquered a lot of the world. So the situation was completely different. And I'm saying all that to say is I think with the fan base growing up, seeing Korra as seeing Korra, like I said, they put such a focus on her making mistakes and having to learn from those mistakes, but then making more mistakes. It kind of like as a fan, you're like, okay, this is kind of
too
like I
real.
said, not too real, but like, well, hold on, let me think of my words. Um, it comes off a certain way that I understand can make someone feel like I'm not really feeling her type
Yeah,
deal.
no, definitely, because there are definitely parts in the beginning of book one, like when she openly challenges Amon to a duel. You're like, what are
Yeah.
you doing?
See, Aang, yeah, that's a perfect example. Aang, one, he never had an opportunity to do anything like that, and even if he did,
Because people were
people was
always
people would stop
they
him.
would either
Yeah.
stop him or people were already just trying to fight him.
Now, I do like that the Legend of Korra in season one has a political aspect to it,
Yeah,
and it
I mean,
shows how.
honestly, Korra every season kind of has political aspects to it.
Yeah, but I'm just we're talking about season one.
Fair, okay.
And season one shows how the Avatar is not only a political figure, but how the Avatar is used as a political figure. And with her being young, naive, how people were able, I'm sure people didn't influence Aang like this because I'm sure they got, some stuff over on him. But with her being so new to the post, like people know what the Avatar means, like
Tarlock knew how to manipulate her.
yeah, he knew how to manipulate her, but he knew how to use that to his advantage to get what he want in a political realm. I think that's really cool. You were speaking about pro bending.
Oh yeah, so the pro bending concept, in my opinion, was one of the best concepts Korra created, and I'm really sad that they got rid of it in the latter seasons. Um,
I am so I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted
so
about pro
the
bending.
part
I don't.
part of the reason why I liked it is because
It's different.
it's different, and it really kind of put bending in a perspective of how we really would act. Like, think about it. If regular humans could bend the elements, yeah, we would probably be in a bunch of bloody wars. Millions would die. But I do think at some point when peace is actually found, they would have, the same way we found a way to turn war into a sport in football, they would have found a way to turn war into bending into a sport with pro bending.
I
And
agree.
I think that's a really dope concept, and not to mention, like, it kind of builds on Mako's character because he's the captain of the Fire Ferrets. He's this young rookie bender that people kind of know because his name's getting out there, and that's how he gets with Asami. And I think that would have been a really cool concept, like Mako become. And I know I'm diving into further seasons, and I'm sorry about that, but
Oh yeah, they
like
well, just not to dive into further seasons. I can just say they get to be characters this season.
yeah, they get to be characters this season.
Mako and Asami both get to
Yeah,
actually be characters.
yeah, and in this season, in the next few seasons, Mako just joins the police force, and I just feel like if he had stayed a pro bender, that would have been more interesting. And there's
Again, you don't gotta spoil stuff for people. You can just say he's a
fair,
character
fair,
in this.
fair, fair, but still, I feel like
All
that's
this
not
emotion.
it's not really too much of a spoiler. It's not like I do with the big hits. We already spoiled who the main villain is last episode. So
I
anyway,
don't know who that is. I don't remember that episode.
Okay, Shelby.
Um,
But yeah,
oh yeah, we did
yeah,
talk
we
about.
did,
Well,
we did. But
so speak. Oh, go ahead.
I just think that like I think pro bending's a really cool concept. And then the way that they did it, like the pro bending scenes were awesome. They were
Yeah,
so much
season
fun to
one.
watch.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I don't want to say that's an example of, how there was a plan and that was implemented very well in book one. But yeah, I agree with you. The pro bending stuff is very entertaining. And just kind of how it introduced the new team avatar to an extent.
Yeah, it's
Asami's,
kind of the same concept of like why Harry Potter fans love Quidditch so much, if that makes sense.
no, I don't get that.
So, like, Quidditch was a sport that happened in the Harry Potter world that allowed people to, like, identify with something other than magic, if that makes sense. Like,
Okay.
it's more than just seeing a bunch of spells. It's seeing a concept and rules that you can follow that you get to see examples of how magic is used beyond just, oh, they have random powers and they're firing spells off at each other. You see it used in, like, a different context, and
Okay.
seeing bending in a different context is nice.
I honestly don't think Quidditch did it as well.
Oh no, they didn't. No, it wasn't nearly
Yeah.
as well. Pro bending's a better concept.
They used the pro bending as a story device to introduce the new team avatar, which Asami is kind of randomly thrown in there.
Yeah, Asami is introduced in a really random way. It is like we need to figure out how to get this.
Shows up.
Yeah,
basically.
we need to figure out how to get this industrialist guy who's a side villain into the show. And
Well, they needed a fourth. Not only that, but they needed a fourth member for the team because there's always supposed to be four.
yeah, I mean there wasn't 4 people in book 1. It was 3.
Yeah, no, I know, but because you're in a situation where Korra doesn't have to learn the elements,
True.
you can't be like, all right, well, we're gonna get another Bender and add him to the team. Like it's
True.
not like
That's true.
the previous avatars. So, but I do like her introduction. Like I said, she is allowed to be a character in this season. So that's cool. Let's move on to the Equalists.
Sure, let's go for it. I understand that you don't like them as villains.
Yeah, I think I think Aang and the Equalists are kind of the weakest villains of the Avatar series.
I just don't understand how they beat everybody so easily. Like I get that electricity is a powerful thing. We get that lightning is strong. And we get that chi blocking is strong. We've seen what Ty Lee can do. Take out a whole Earth Kingdom fleet. But I just don't understand, and maybe it's because the benders in Republic City just aren't the same level as the trained, aren't as skilled as the trained benders of, the temples and the Earth Kingdom and the Water Tribes, and that's why when they actually fought trained benders, most of these chi blockers got owned. But I just don't see how it was so hard for them to win this fight. I don't.
I agree with that to an extent. I know there were some very skilled chi blockers, and I think this just kind of goes into it being a shorter season. Like instead of separating the group of elite, equalists, it's just like kind of all the equalists were kind of like on the same level. They could scrap with benders, which makes sense to an extent.
The fact that they chose chi blocking as the way for them to do it, that also makes sense because
I didn't really get, and I don't mean cut you off. What the part that kind of throws me off is Amon as a whole. So was his plan just to become like the ruler of a bunch of non-benders, or like because he's technically a hypocrite.
Yeah, he's a massive hypocrite.
Yeah, the way I look at him, spoiler alert, he is a waterbender.
He's a bloodbender.
And he's trying to convince non-benders to rise up against benders. And even with his backstory, I didn't really understand what the end goal was, if that makes sense.
I think the end goal was simply I think he and Tarlok actually had the same end goal, just different means. they wanted to control Republic City, and by eliminating bending, he would be the only bender. He'd be the strongest bender. He'd be the strongest one, and that way, and he would technically rule the city by being the leader of this revolution where the people would get behind him, and
and
they would.
I get how it is.
If I remember correctly, this concept is populism, because I know that every season of Avatar has a different concept that they fight against, and I think this one's populism.
Theme, and I kind of get the symbolism of it, but I just don't see the realism behind it. I mean, Republic City is in the Earth, is technically a part of the Earth Kingdom.
True.
So, I mean, it's separate, but that's where it's located. It's located in the Earth Kingdom. So the plan is to take on the rest of the world, or are you just trying to make Republic City? And this is why I'm saying he's the weakest villain to me personally. I get, again, it's probably due to time constraints of only being 12 episodes.
And no plan for a follow-up season.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine with the way their story ends. I just don't think it was enough to rank him. Like, I think Ozai was, and I know Ozai gets a lot of crap for being, not a good villain, but as far as the things that Ozai did, I would rank Ozai higher than Aang. Like, Aang, I'm not completely understanding what we were doing here, other than an annoyance for the city and Avatar.
I mean, it's not an annoyance. It's a terrifying concept. Like, he's a terrorist. I get it. He definitely takes. He cripples people and he takes their bending away. That's significant. But
no. I get his actions are, but what's the reasoning?
Right. That's the thing. There kind of isn't.
Like, Daddy was mean to you, so you want to take away people's bending, or
they're kind. They're just.
What was the long term? Is all I'm saying. And that's what throws it off for me.
And I don't think. And you have to have the context of what they were going for. Like, they're like, hey, we got 12 episodes. Let's just make a cool villain. Make a cool villain that is really hard to beat because he's really cunning and they plan everything out, and Korra doesn't know how to be a Avatar yet. And by be an Avatar, I mean she doesn't know how to, like, deal with the political manipulations and machinations, or whatever you call it, machinations. And, like, she's going to kind of get in over her head, and this guy's going to plan it all out and become a thorn in her side and everything else. But as far as, like, an overall what happens next, I don't think they really need to worry about what happens next, if that makes sense. Like, it was going to be resolved after episode 12, so why deal with that?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, time constraints. But other than that, I like the little twist. Again, focusing on relationships. Aang has a cool relationship that you find out about later on in the season. And you get to see the history as to how that happened.
Oh, the whole backstory reveal is great. I love when they go back, when you see Aang's flashback. I love when you see Tarlok's flashback. It both work really, really well.
Yeah, it works really well, and that's what I'm saying. They did a really good job with relationships and connections between people. I just said it wasn't enough to sell him as a great villain to me. Shout out to Stephen Bloom.
Oh, Stephen Bloom did a great job. He was in his bag. He was in his bag, man.
That's my guy. I love that voice actor.
Steve is a classic, because let me think about it. He's been around for our whole lives, from Tom Tsunami to Orochimaru to
he has been around.
Dude from Gurren Lagann to
Leron.
Yeah,
I met him. Got his autograph.
I'm hoping he comes to Yoma or to the Motor City Comic Con at some point. I'd love to actually get the chance to meet him too. So
supposedly there is no more Motor City Comic Con. They lost too much money.
What?
Not Motor Detroit. Whatever one is the one that happens in Detroit.
Okay, that's Detroit Comic Con. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised they lost too much money. They were brand new.
That was such a good opportunity. Anyways, so yeah, talking about characters, Tenzin, Bolin. Feel like all the characters are great in book one.
Yeah, and let's before we keep diving in, we have to talk about who is easily the most badass character. There's no denying this. Lin Beifong is that girl. She's clearly of the Beifong bloodline. Like, Lin is amazing.
Yep, Lin does an excellent job.
I,
Again, all of, like we talked about last week, all of the characters that are connected to previously established characters, I feel like are great.
yeah. Like, I forgot that she takes down she basically takes down one warship, is in the process of taking down another before she has to, like, obviously lose for plot reasons. But, just think about it, she doesn't take any L's after this. Like, this is the only L she takes the whole series.
You might be surprised. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, I'm. It's been a minute since I've watched any of the books, so I could be wrong. I just know she takes down one person in an upcoming book that is quite the nice change of pace, if that makes sense. But we'll get to that at a later point in time. But yeah, the characters are great for Korra. The character I have the biggest issue with, in my opinion, is Mako. Out of all of them, like,
you mean watered down Zuko?
Yeah.
I understand that, and I think they really didn't know what to do with Mako, because he was like, and I don't mean to offend anybody if Mako is your favorite character, but Mako and Bolin kind of get lost. Again, because there wasn't an original established plan for them. He essentially is a character that is based around his relationships. Because outside of his parents, and them being orphans, there's not much else to explore with him after this season. I feel.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
he tried, like you said, they make him a police officer to try and give him something to do.
They give him something in book 3. They help both Bolin and Mako develop a little bit more in book 3, in my opinion. When they go to Ba Sing Se, yeah, they do. I think that expands it a little bit, not a lot.
A little bit. It's just a little bit. I have to rewatch it again. But I remember my original review of Korra because I told it to you and Kate, and we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Okay, that's fair. But yeah, as far as Mako goes, and this is another issue that I do think that when it comes to relationships, it was the best part of Avatar, but when it comes to of Korra, but when it comes to, like, ships, I actually think Korra it's messy.
I like it.
I don't
like that it's messy.
It's messy, but not, like, in my opinion, it's not messy, like, in a good way.
It's like August Alsina messy.
Jesus Christ.
Again, no. Again, though, that goes into immaturity. And immaturity is kind of the theme. Yeah, Korra is a master bender in terms of 3 elements, but mentally and emotionally, she's not an adult yet. She's going through, like I said, these relationships, and we don't know. Aang could have went through that too, but that wasn't one of the focuses of the original show.
True.
And now you're switching pace because I think they were like, well, our audience is older, and they're going to want to see more romance and more, love triangles.
Yeah, but I guess for me, it just the justification for how Mako leaves Asami is kind of whack. Like, it's very generic. It's a really generic love triangle, and I think that's actually the biggest problem for me, is that it's so generic. Yeah. I actually stand by that, and most people know this. If you want a healthy relationship, the best ship in the show would have been Korra and Bolin, in my opinion. But
which was being set up, but yeah, and that's I think one of the problems with Mako is because there's less to him than kind of the rest of the characters in the cast, in the sense.
Yeah, because he's not funny. He's not funny like Bolin. He's not really smart. He's not cunning like Asami is. He's just kind of the pretty boy.
Yeah, he's the serious firebender character because that worked last time. But he doesn't have the backstory or the character development of the previous firebender character.
Which they could have given him. It just didn't get into it as much as they could have. It is what it is.
Yeah, if they would have maybe incorporated him teaching Korra like lightning bending.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
He clearly could use it very efficiently. He used it for work.
Hey man, the factory jobs.
Hey, exactly. They pay well. You cannot argue about that.
20 something an hour. So yeah, I understand that.
But overall, I definitely like I said, my biggest gripe with Korra are just the book one are just two things. It's the ship, it's the love triangle because it's really generic in my opinion, and also I'll admit, I really identified with Bolin when I was first watching this. I identified very heavily.
My man showed up with the flowers.
With the flowers.
See, they said, "Nah, baby, I'm about to take you out to Red Robin's real quick. These bottomless fries, girl."
Exactly. Hey, let's have the BDs. These noodles are great. It's delicious. The next thing,
man, you such a good friend.
Right? Huh? Wait, what? I don't understand. And then next thing you know, it don't work out. And next thing you know, Chris is the one with that they're attracted to. But that's beside the point.
Pulled him, then dived into a childhood trauma.
But
my gripe with the ending of Korra. I mean, my only gripe with book one is again, this goes back into the planning and how it wasn't planned to be a sequel. And you mentioned this a little earlier. I don't like how she unlocks airbending.
So let's get into that a little bit.
To wrap this up, I feel like it's random. I feel like, and I know you were saying, Aang. You were trying to do a comparison between Aang and his firebending.
Shoot, even Aang and waterbending. Think about how. He had to practice. He had to practice as well. Right, he had to practice it, but in a matter of what, like a 30-minute episode, he was using waterbending almost efficiently as Katara was.
Yeah, but here's my thing. So I just think it could have been done better. One of the arcs of the season is how like Korra can't airbend at all.
Right.
And rather than her, because she's a prodigy.
Right.
And rather than her just like unlocking it because someone is in danger, because people have been in danger before, people have been in trouble before, I would have rather it have been something she like actually have to work for, versus just, okay, I lost my bending and now that clears the way for me to airbend. And is what it seems like. And see, I understand there's deeper meaning behind it because the person she loved was in trouble. I get that, but it is so spontaneous. Oh, I can airbend now. So, she even said she like I can airbend, and she airbends. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So a way that you could have handled this differently is definitely like, let's say when she got captured by Tarlok and was communicating with Aang through meditation. A way that you could have possibly built that up differently would have been like, maybe by doing that she finally gets a concept of spiritualness and finally gets a concept of like the way to think about airbending, and instead of her just airbending when she punches trying to like save Mako, it could have been a situation of like they have to get away from something and then Amon shows up and like you have like a clear your mind moment from Tenzin where like she hears him talking and then all of a sudden she figures it out that way or something along those lines. That could. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm gonna be honest. I don't have an exact answer for a better way they could have handled that situation, but again, it just seems like she just gets it in that episode. It just happens.
Yeah.
And they devote a lot of time into explaining like, hey, I've just never been, that connected. And Tenzin's like, well, it typically deals with, like the opposite of your personality. It's the hardest element to master, and so on and so forth. And it's just like it just clicks, and she just does it. And then now, okay, that would have been acceptable. I could have lived with that. But the next part, The next part is what kills it for me. And there's only one comparison to the original series I can give. So a couple, like a month later, or however long later it was, go see Katara. Yeah, I can't fix her. Okay, cool. Next up, yeah, I'm sad. I'm gonna go for a walk on my own. But Aang shows up out of nowhere. Yeah, no, yeah, it happens. Yeah, and here you go. Here's all your bending back.
Yeah,
And here's the Avatar state.
yeah.
Huh?
I
Excuse me?
definitely, yeah, I will definitely say that happened. And when I remember first watching, I was like, oh, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Like the thing, but here's the thing: like it makes sense as a general concept, but as a story writing or as a show plot line, it kind of it they had to do it. The best way,
No, no,
like
I get that. Well, no, not necessarily because they if well, you didn't know it was gonna be a
yeah,
season
you
two.
didn't know it was gonna be a season two,
Okay.
so you like I have a feeling. Let's say that, and I don't know if they would have ended it that melancholy on season one. I think they would have like I think they would have had a way for her to like maybe learn the Avatar state in season two if they had been given that concept, and that's how you could have developed the spirits concept of season two in a different way. But
Yeah, because it's just like again in the same episode she's given another ability where you
yeah,
have an opportunity
it all
for
happens episode 12.
yeah where you have an opportunity for Korra to have to work to get this. And while you're what you're saying is like, hey, Aang got firebending pretty quickly, but in order to master those things, it always showed him training, even if it was an episode.
Right.
There was always like, hey, I can do it, but I don't master it, and I don't think Korra ever masters airbending, like in the series. It is
I
it is talked about. She definitely learns how to use it, but she mastered the previous elements. I don't think she ever mastered airbending.
well, I think actually I can't even talk. I can't even
Yeah,
argue. We'll have to watch to really
we'll
discuss it.
address it coming back,
But
but again, airbending is such a big focus in book 1. And then it's like she gets airbending, she gets access to the avatar state, and where I was saying in the original Avatar, Aang does get energy bending, right? It is an ability given to him by a lion turtle, and the lore explains why lion turtles are such a big deal. But it's never been like stated that the previous avatars can just be like, oh no, is something wrong with you? I got you. Here you go. Actually, no, it wasn't, because even for my man to talk to, even for Aang to talk to a previous avatars, it had to be like on a specific day at a certain time type deal.
no, by the time everything was done, he was just straight up talking to all four of his previous lives. By the end of the season,
Correct. Yeah, he was able to sit down and connect with them. He was at some place specific. It wasn't like a every day, every time. Like I'm just walking in the Arctic type deal.
true. I mean, yeah, like the world Korra does as a series
Retcon
does
some things.
retcon some of the things that were established in the previous Avatar,
So,
and
I'm just saying, as someone watching, like, let's say I just watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I'm watching first episode of Korra. You would think to yourself, dang, why ain't Aang just talk? Why he have to go through that whole spirit world? Okay, I gotta meet Roku on a certain day at this temple. Why didn't he just
yeah,
talk to him?
yeah, no,
You know?
that's all very very valid,
So
but
so again, that goes into, and I don't mean to keep cutting you off, but 'cause I know what you're gonna say to an extent. That goes into them only having 12 episodes.
exactly.
That is one of the things that throws me off personally, because the time was shortened. In a sense, you gave Korra some things she didn't earn. Same, Aang had to go through this whole journey where, hey, nobody's alive to teach you this. We got Guru Pati. My man said, eat some onion banana juice and let go of everything. And Aang figures out on his own, hey, you know what? It's another way to kind of do this to where I don't have to let go of everything that I love.
I mean, he doesn't even really figure it out on his own. His chi just gets unlocked. A rock breaks his back, and his chakra gates are reopened. That's
Yeah,
really what
yeah,
happens.
yeah, 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 yeah. And maybe that was a retcon, but he like I don't have to let everything go to access this state. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's just it's a really confusing thing to discuss Korra because again, we like it and it sounds like we don't.
No,
Like it
I talked about. I said this is the one thing. This is the one main thing about book one that I don't like, and I'm explaining that is due to previous lore. It seems like it is the weirdest thing that she just gets airbending, and that she then gets the Avatar state because the previous Avatar gave it to her. That's all I'm saying, and that is weird because we've seen entire journeys about people having to
but
unlock.
as far as the Avatar state goes, we the thing that they completely let go of in this series is the Avatar state as a defense mechanism.
Not, they bring it back in book three, but I mean, the Avatar state is weakened in core is not as strong as it was in the original series.
And we can get into
Uh,
that. We can get into that after we talk about book 2. But what
we're
I was
gonna talk about it
what
in book two, but I was just saying that's my only gripe. We love you love book one. Do you think it's really good?
yes, I think book 1's great.
Yeah, I just think again it has that minor issue for me personally. That might not even be an issue for most people, but for me personally, that is the thing that like throws me off about it.
Yeah, but overall, I can't. I'm not gonna sit back and I'm not gonna sit back and act like there are like that. It's a bad show. Like there are people that are out there on the internet that are openly calling Korra a bad show and Korra a bad character, and I can't do that anymore.
I again, I don't think Korra is the issue. I think it is not Korra the character. I think that the writing in certain areas is what throws it off. That's it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what every show always comes down to. It always comes down to the writing at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. I understand why someone could dislike Korra as a character because again they're doing something different than the original series. And Korra goes on a what I believe is called a negative character arc. And in the beginning, she starts at a high point, and at the end, she starts kind of. I mean, at the end, it's kind of like a lower point for sure. And the fact that it ends the way that it ends, it doesn't feel resolved for some people. So I understand why you cannot like her as a character, because they had when they were telling this story, they had that in mind. They're like, we want, like I said, this character to make mistakes. We want this character to be hurt. We want this character to be humanized and have to go through trials and tribulations, and maybe she doesn't recover from them, and that's okay because that is realistic, because like we said earlier in the podcast, that is part of the goal that they were going for. They wanted the character to be flawed, but I understand how that could take away for some people, because it's like, well, where's the comeback type deal?
Right.
I don't feel like towards the end, some people could be like, towards the end, I don't get, I don't really get what they were going for because it doesn't feel finished, and I
And
get that,
we'll
but
get
it's
in.
not as
It's not as bad as some people on
the
the
show's
internet
not
making it
bad.
out.
No,
It's not a bad show at all, honestly.
it's still we described it perfectly last episode. Legend of Korra is still better than most shows that come out.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
But we're gonna continue this series over the next few weeks. Up next is book 2, Spirits. Um,
Oh boy.
book 2 is definitely the most controversial out of all 4 books, in my opinion. I think we talked a little bit as to why, but we'll get more into that next week because there are some things that I love about book 2.
And you know what? I'm gonna say this: everything that people have gripes about for Legend of Korra, it's stuff that's below the surface.
Yeah,
If you look at if you take
that is
everything in this
very
show,
true.
if you take everything in this show at face value, because you're thinking about book two, Book 2 is a really cool season. Everybody talked about it as in a cool way. It's just when you dissect stuff, like everybody dissects things and wants to know the meaning behind, and oh, this could have been that, and you changed this. But if you look at stuff for face value, it's really good.
Yeah,
season 2 is really good at face value.
Yeah,
but I understand again, because it is a sequel series, why people are like, oh, well, blah, 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 this and that.
Yeah, and what's wild is, and this is something, this is my last comment, but just to build off of what you said, it makes me realize that we really do analyze the Avatar series more than we analyze other series. Like, we analyze Avatar more than I'd say people analyze Dragon Ball Z.
No, Dragon Ball Z is universally thought of as stupid. See, the Avatar series goes out of its way to make everything deep.
Fair. That's fair.
There's so much meaning and depth in philosophy and religion, and there's all of these concepts in Avatar that force you to think about it. To where Dragon Ball Z has more like themes of, self improvement, pride, letting go or realizing your potential, or maybe living up to a legacy. It has more simpler themes, but it's not like
themes. Yeah,
it's not like Goku is the gods of destruction ain't trying to tell you how to live your life and how to become a better person. They also like scrap. so
exactly, but
it's different.
But we hope you guys like this episode. As you could probably tell from our spirited debates about certain things, we're going to be talking about a lot, but we're going to enjoy the whole process. I'm just glad Korra's back. I'm glad I'm able to watch it on Netflix. I'm glad they reached a deal with Viacom to make this happen so quickly.
Yeah, that is beautiful.
Because the only place it was available before now was either on Amazon, where you had to pay an extra $7 to access Nickelodeon, or on CBS All Access, and no one pays for CBS All Access.
Or you could have bought the Blu-rays that are sold out,
which it cost you $56 when they're normally probably $30, $35.
I think I got mine for like 20 something.
Yeah, there's insanely cheap. They were the regular price. They're insanely cheap, but online they're gonna cost you an arm and a goddamn leg. But anyway, we're glad everyone's able to watch. We really hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Please tell your friends. Please, if you can, rate and review us, especially on Apple and Spotify. It turns out ratings are a big way that podcasts names kind of build up and are able to are posted on like explore pages and stuff like that. And also, I'm not gonna lie, this is a little bit of a not an SOS, but just asking for people who might want to help. We are looking to promote this podcast as much as possible, and I'm not exactly the most well-versed on the world of Twitter and Instagram, so if anyone would like to help a brother out, it would be appreciated.
Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Again, as always, we appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening.
And but that's going to do it for us. My name's CJ.
I'm Shelby.
And this is Fans Perspective, signing out.
We'll catch you next time.